Yeah, it's on.
Virtual. We're live.
Okay.
Can we go back to virtual, Mark?
We'll talk about that later on. All right.
This is a mess.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. We are resuming tonight's Board of Selectmen meeting. It's August 11th. I'm going to take an item out of order. We have on our agenda tonight.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh. Before we proceed any further, I'd like to ask everyone to join me in a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We only got two left.
Thank you. Thank you. Once again, welcome, everybody. We're taking an item out of order tonight. We're going to proceed with a recognition of a very important rescue that took place earlier this year at Seagull Beach. So I'm going to turn it over to our town administrator, who's
Thank you.
going to act as the MC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to recognize the Fire Chief, Phil Simonian.
We're good.
Make sure that green light is on, Chief.
It is. Can you hear me?
We can.
We're good? Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you. This is actually a great save made by the lifeguards and everyone, police, fire, all working together cohesively. So on July 21st, 2020, at approximately 2:30 p.m., Yarmouth Fire Dispatch received a frantic 911 from a bystander at Seagull Beach, reporting that a woman had just drowned. Shortly after fire apparatus were dispatched, we received a radio call from our lifeguards at Seagull Beach reporting they had recovered an unresponsive person from the water and that CPR was being performed. Yarmouth Fire and Police arrived on scene shortly after to find that the woman was breathing on her own and beginning to regain consciousness. This was all a result of the heroic actions of lifeguards Emily Quinn retrieving the victim from the water and immediately beginning CPR, head lifeguard Madison Paulina controlling the situation and assisting with CPR. These two lifeguards managed the patient with the help of an off-duty firefighter and a retired firefighter who were at the beach for the day. Three other lifeguards, Gus Broods, Owen Broods, and Adriana Saracola, assisted by directing rescuers, communicating with YFD dispatch, and controlling the crowd. All of our lifeguards performed as a team to allow the best possible outcome for this patient. In this teamwork, which played a major role in the recovery of the patient's regular heartbeat and breathing and the eventual recovery at the scene, without the actions of these individuals working together, the outcome would have most likely been much worse. The American Heart Association, which certifies individuals in cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, identifies early activation of EMS and bystander CPR as the first two links in the chain of survival. The team approach allowed for these two links to be accomplished without delay, greatly contributing to the successful resuscitation. The act of performing CPR is an intimate and personal decision and represents a commitment to caring of another that deserves special recognition. This level of dedication to helping another human being honors the individual and those that have stepped up to watch over our community. Ms. Quinn and Ms. Paulina took the step and furthered the tradition of those who serve. The Yarmouth Fire Department is proud to recognize these individuals and our partners in protecting our community. The Yarmouth Lifeguard Service, through their dedication, actions, and citizens and visitors of Yarmouth are safer. Thank you. The Deputy Chief will present the certificates to Emily Quinn. Emily? Madison? And Madison Paulina.
Good job.
Thank you very much. We also have letters to give out. Is Adriana Saracola here?
They're not here.
They're not here.
We will pass them
You'll
on
take
to
care
them.
of that.
Yes, I will.
Very good. Would you like to say anything? Well,
summed it up great. We're proud of them, and it's been a long, hard summer, and they've done a great job, so we're proud of them.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and our team here is fantastic. And like I said, this was a great story and a great outcome. It's been a very busy summer with water rescues throughout the entire Cape, not just in Yarmouth. So,
Yeah, before you go, are we ready?
Yes, we are ready.
Yeah, I think before you leave, obviously we've all been very impressed with this act of heroism and all the service that you've provided. What I'd like to do is to see if I have a motion to recognize this heroism and to recognize this outstanding effort and teamwork on behalf of the town of Yarmouth. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It carries unanimously. So we join with all of you in recognizing and appreciate an expression of appreciation and recognition for all that you've done. And before I close, let me recognize that we have before us tonight another outstanding public servant, and that's Chief Paulina from the town of Chatham. And we welcome you here, and you have an outstanding daughter. So thank you. Thank you for all that you've done. So there you go.
We have our citations.
Yep. Good bring it up.
We have to present to you as well certificates acknowledging your service. So before you leave, make sure that.
Should we read them?
Who's got them?
Yeah, then let's take a moment. Let's read the individual citations, if you'd like.
Okay. The Town of Yarmouth, the Board of Selectmen official citation. Be it known that the Town of Yarmouth hereby recognizes Emily Quinn, lifeguard, for extraordinary heroism. And be it further known that the Town of Yarmouth extends its sincere thanks and gratitude for the life-saving efforts demonstrated on July 21st, 2020. That this citation is duly signed by the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen on this day, August 11th, in the year of the Lord 2020. Signed by the Chairman, Mark Forrest. We also have
Go ahead, Dan.
one for Madison Paulina with the same verbiage. We have one for Gus Brutz, Owen Brutz, and Adriana Saracola.
Yeah, please step forward. There you go.
Thank you. Do they want to say anything about it?
No, I don't think so. No. And before we conclude, just another round of applause for. We're going to take a 5-minute recess.
We're gonna go public comment.
Yep.
And then we got the package store, I guess. Yeah.
I can't have them all.
I think the Gov's order though creates some real obstacles.
I just stole, you have two behind your computer.
Oh, I did?
Yeah, so I just borrowed one.
Go right ahead.
Oh yeah, there is one.
So now
behind
we
the
have to bring
computer.
in.
Well, that was good. You did a recess so we can.
Holy cow.
Yeah, no, that was good.
What? Nothing? Huh?
Fancy.
It's not the same.
That was nice. Is that it, Dan?
Yep, that's
You
it.
Coming? Okay. Very good. Okay. We're on.
Yep, public comments.
All right, the next item on the agenda is public comments. Would anybody like to speak before the board? Ms. Flynn. Excuse me, ma'am, I recognize the woman right behind you. You'll be next.
Sorry, we're lined up so
Sorry.
in a row here.
Thank you. Your name?
Joyce Flynn, thank you. It's good to see you all, not in little boxes. We have just a couple short energy updates. One is that the Cape Light Compact is having a pandemic special where the weatherization and insulation don't have a cap. Usually with the weatherization and insulation, the incentive goes up to a maximum of $4,000, but the cap is off if you're in the line for audits by August 31st. You only have to be in the line. You don't have to have your audit done then. They're willing to do both virtual audits for people who prefer them, you know, utility bills and phone conversations and house dimensions, or actual audits. Myself, I prefer the actual audit, but I can understand that these are strange times. Anyway, the incentives could be huge, so if you know anyone who has worried about their 20% of financing or anything like that, this would be the time to get a drafty old house or a kind of built-in-a-hurry house that didn't have enough insulation fixed once and for all, because you never get such a deal again. We also have a piece of news from another Energy Committee colleague, and prepare to smile widely at this one.
Okay.
Thank you, Joyce. My name is Mike Duffy with the Energy Committee. Mr. Chairman and fellow board members, I would like to formally announce to you and members of the public who may be watching on TV that through the efforts of the Yarmouth Energy Committee, the town of Yarmouth has been awarded an $11,000 grant from the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center for the 2020 Solarized Mass Plus program. This program strives to increase the adoption of small-scale solar PV systems and air source heat pumps through a grassroots educational campaign driven mainly by local volunteers. Together with the CEC, we will be competitively selecting a solar PV installer and an air source heat pump installer who, because of the potential for a large number of installations, will be able to offer our homeowners and small businesses significantly reduced prices. Since the CEC launched Solarized Mass in 2011, over 3,500 residents and business owners in 82 communities have signed contracts resulting in over 23 megawatts of capacity. Although the pandemic has forced us to delay our outreach activities, we are still hopeful to realize a significant number of installations in 2021. Thank you for your attention and your previous support.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Yes.
I really just wanted to get the mask off. Go ahead. Thanks. Thank you. Judy Connors Tarver, District 4. I just wanted to talk to you tonight about the parking and usage issues at Bass Hole. So I've been a full-time resident for about 8 years. Prior to that, I was part-time. Prior to that, I was a long-time vacationer here, and I have very warm feelings about Bass Hole. And I just give you that background because I think it's really important with this issue that we look at it from many viewpoints. And I know this is on the agenda later, but as far as making this a residents-only access point. And I think before we have your discussion, I just wanted to suggest that we need to decide whether this is actually the right question to ask, because the questions that we ask determine the answers that we generate and the decisions that we then make. So we have to be sure we're asking the right question. So is the question, shall we make this residents only, the only question that we should be asking? So when we step back, we need to look at what's actually happening up there. It's the only public access point on the north side, and the only public boat launch that I know about. And even though as a resident I enjoy South Middle Beach and it's a little calmer there being a residents only beach, I think that kind of restriction might be more reactive than a necessary plan that we should have in that area. And so do we really know what's even going on? I know there's a lot of folklore, a lot of comments, a lot of personal commentary. Facebook was lighting up. But how many of the people who are actually there do have beach stickers? How many don't have beach stickers? I remember as a part-timer being absolutely berated by someone because they saw my license plate, even though I did have a sticker, and there were plenty of parking spaces. So, now that we don't have parking spaces, that might be something to be looking at. I'm really concerned about people using that access point to just walk across and get to Chapin Beach, and avoid depending on what day it is, a $25 or $30 fee. And the other thing that I've noticed when I've been up there is that the trailer spaces are often just full with single vehicles. Even though they're labeled for boat trailers only, they're just single cars up there. One day I was up there within our beach time, like 3:30, 4 o'clock, and every single one of those spaces was filled with one car. If I had arrived with my trailer, I would have been very upset that I didn't have access to do that. And the other thing is the beach has changed, everybody knows this, in a huge way over the last few years. And how much of the time can we actually use that boat launch? And what kind of a boat can get in there? How big a boat can go in there? So we might need to look at how that beach is being used. And if we've got a boat launch that's being used by kayaks, they don't need trailers necessarily. And then the other thing is, have we actually maximized that parking lot, or would a different layout be a little more efficient, like reassigning some of those trailer spaces? And I've always wondered why that wasn't a sticker-only beach, or just dealt with the same way some of the others are. It's not a way to the water. It's not one of those little things that we have all over the place. So when we look at our financial resources and having police officers up there, comparing that to having a little booth and somebody just saying, okay, you have a sticker, okay, you need to give me $20, seems to be a much more efficient financial approach than having a police officer basically babysitting a parking lot. It's just one of those things where we need to get the information that's pertinent before a decision is made. And I know you're all reflective, and I know you all look into these things, but I also know that there's a lot of pressure and there's been a lot of noise about this issue. So I just want to be another voice saying, let's look at it, let's make a plan. If when the chief talks, there's some urgency expressed about a decision needs to be made, I think that needs to be a temporary one and not a long-term one, and that we need to be reflective when we look at that. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm Tom LaValle. I live on Lookout Road in Yarmouthport. I've been a full-time resident of Yarmouth for 25 years, and during the course of that time, for 25 years, I've been a slip holder at Bass Hole Grays Beach. Mm-hmm. The first several years that I was down there, it was a very quiet place. The beach was used sparingly, but the boat slips were always full. The erosion of the dunes on Chapin Beach that is now the sandbar between Chapin and Grays has steadily become a hotspot at low tide, particularly over the last 5 years or so, with this year being the busiest I've ever seen it. Beachgoers flock to this relatively new sandbar and set up their beach area with plenty of social distancing until the tide comes up. And once the water moves in, they migrate to Grays Beach, so many of them that social distancing becomes impossible. Those that do not migrate back to Grays quickly enough often find themselves in a predicament. It seems that many of our out-of-town guests and visitors do not monitor tide charts or understand how treacherous the outgoing current can be. Depending on the time of tide on a given day, our terrific lifeguards at Grays can be extremely busy. I've personally rescued people including children with my boat late in the day when the lifeguards are off duty because of an unawareness of the power of the current or because they ventured to Chapin Beach on foot without knowledge of the changing tides. My fellow slip holders have also frequently been called to action. And I know we're here to talk about parking tonight, but in the interest of safety, perhaps additional signage regarding the current on the marsh at the mouth of where the slips begin could help. I fully understand and support the actions that were taken to stop illegal parking on the road leading to the beach. The police officers assigned to this enforcement over 2 or 3 successive weekends did a terrific job, as usual, but it seems to me that an ongoing police presence for parking enforcement is not the best use of this critically important department. These days, I'm often unable to find a parking spot, and as such, I cannot use my boat. I believe the only solution in the interest of safety, utilization of town resources, and access for slip holders is to limit the beach to residents only, seasonally, during daytime hours. Or alternatively, you could give us slip holders 5 or so spots, and I think we'd be happy with that as well. That'd be difficult to do. It's very tight. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Morris.
Vita Morris. I wanted to talk a little bit about the so-called reopening of the town hall. When one walks in here during the so-called open hours, you find a place that looks almost like a morgue. The windows are all shuttered, and it's almost dark. And what I would like to know, and I asked for this information earlier this afternoon from the administrator's office, how many employees are back at work during these short hours, and in comparison to what used to be the case before the pandemic. The other thing I want to know, and I haven't gotten that information, so I would very much like to know, because the impression is that it's akin to having a door about 2 inches ajar at this point. And I don't see why that would have to be the case at all. In fact, I think it gives a bad impression for the school district to reopen if we're going to be this slow and this, timid and what have you. It's just something needs to be done about that. And the other thing about the reopening, I know the man is from the South Yarmouth Library, who is sort of acting as a receptionist. Is he a town employee? I mean, is an employee? My impression was I used to think that he was a volunteer at South Yarmouth Library. Why don't we have one of our own employees at least earning their keep, acting as a receptionist up there, if you have to have it? So but I would very much like to know how many employees are here during do you have that information, Dan?
I will give that to you tomorrow.
Okay, I guess I'll have to speak to it the next time I'm here. There has been people have brought up problems that have occurred at the former Cavalier Motel situation, and I was trying to get some information about that, and I got some of the numbers in terms of who got spaces in there and what have you, and that there have definitely been problems, especially calls to the fire department and also the police department and what have you. But I was trying to also get information on how many children are involved. And I wasn't called back with that information because something about privacy suddenly becomes kind of a matter of importance. And at the very least, I mean, I was trying to determine in a 3-bedroom apartment, I said to Mary when I spoke with her, how many children maximum could be accommodated. She doesn't seem to know, because I thought that there are certain rules for septic systems, that one bedroom is to accommodate 2 people. And don't they have to follow something like that? But they don't seem they seem to be operating by different rules over there. So,
Peter, we're at the 3-minute mark, so could you wrap this up?
The thing is, I thought that I just want to make one comment.
Thank you.
I thought Tracy had said at the last meeting something of when you were people deciding about some more public housing, I guess. She made a comment, and maybe I misunderstood, that there were so many calls, ambulance calls from senior housing, But if that's the case, I would like her to figure out how many calls you would need in order to reach the amount of money that is spent per student at the DY district, which is about $20,000. And I just don't understand why we would have to have any more public housing unless it is for seniors.
You don't want children to move to town? Is that what your point is?
I'm sorry?
You don't want children in our town? Is that what your point is?
But why do we, when we have, how many times am I going to have to tell you, there are waiting lists for senior housing? And you people keep building this other type of housing.
Okay.
Which
for families.
All right, hold on, folks.
But that's, but your comment was totally out of line because
Vita, let me just make sure.
No, your comment's out of line.
No.
Tracy, hold up, please.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to the next public comment. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Nathan Kusmal. I've been a resident of Yarmouth Port for 24 years. About 3 weeks ago was the first time in those 24 years that I was turned away from Grays Beach. I live right down the street. I've always gone there. You know, the first year I lived here, I bought a beach sticker, realized I only go to one beach. Now it's almost impossible to go there. My kids grew up on that beach. We have a boat down there. We have a kayak down there. Parking has been getting out of hand for the last several years, and I agree with everything Tom says. You watch the people come down, and they just go right across to Chapin Beach. You know, on the Saturday, it will cost you $30 to park at Chapin Beach, but it's free at Grays Beach. I understand everybody loves the boardwalk, the views, and all that. They go for the sunset. After 5, you could have it open to the public, but it's definitely gotten out of hand down there. The parking all the way down the street.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that might have a public comment to make? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is a public hearing on a number of proposals that are before us, and I am going to turn this portion of the meeting over to Mike Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first licensing matter tonight is a transfer of a package store license from Neil Kant Package Corp., doing business as Paradise Wine and Spirits, who's going to be seeking permission to have the license transferred to him or his business as a transferee. Are they present? Want to come forward to the table, please, or to the podium, whichever you're more comfortable at. That's fine. I can see you. Okay, fine. So you want to introduce yourself?
Yep. Good evening, board. I am Nilesh P. Marfatia. I live in Sandwich. I moved to the Cape in 2001. Okay. Since then, I'm in retail industries.
Okay, that's enough. I have to read the legal ad into the record.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. And then you can move back as far as you want.
Okay.
To Adam and Eve if you want.
I'm
right?
sorry.
The Yarmouth Board of Selectmen, acting as a local licensing authority, has received an application for a transfer of an annual all-alcohol package store license from Neil Kant Package Corp., doing business as Paradise Wine and Spirits. Neilish P. Marfatia?
I am.
okay? Just, I guess I pronounced it right. You raised your
You
hand.
did, yes.
Manager.
This is the first time I see someone pronouncing the last name right.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, I get a gold star for that, right? The license is being transferred from Patriot Spirits, Inc., doing business as Liquor and More. Michael Patterson, manager. The premises to be licensed is 451 Station Ave, South Yarmouth, Mass., consisting of 7,253 square feet. All the space is on one floor. There is display space, a cooler, an office, 2 bathrooms, and back storage. No outdoor areas. 2 entrances on the Station Avenue side, front and north side, and 1 rear entrance. Hearing will be held on Tuesday, August 11, 2020, at Town Hall, 1146 Route 28, South Yarmouth. The Selectmen's meeting begins at 6 p.m. Written comments will be accepted until 4:30 p.m. Friday, August 7th, 2020, in the Selectmen's office at Town Hall. Verbal comments will be accepted at the hearing. Okay, so you can proceed and tell us what you got in mind, what you want us to do. Give us just a little overview.
Sure. Yeah. Like I said, my name is Nilesh P. Marfatia. I live in Sandwich, and I am in a retail industry for last 20 years. I did a convenience store for 12 years, and then I got my first package store in Dannysport in 2014, and I'm selling alcohol since then as well. And the Liquor and More package store is, I'm willing to take over, and we're gonna continue to run as the same way, whatever they are doing it right now. And down the road, when we see anything to be changed, we can change something for good future. So.
Okay, and I've looked at all your paperwork. Everything looks to be in good order. You met with Officer Phil Magnuson, who's present tonight.
This afternoon,
and
yes.
He writes the following, which I want to read into the record.
Yep.
This was an email dated today's date, addressed to me. And he said, this afternoon, I met with Neil Marfapia regarding this transfer application. He is well qualified with 6 years' experience owning and operating package stores. I provided a copy of the Yarmouth rules and regulations and reviewed applicable portions with him.
Yes, correct.
So I'm glad you met with him. He's a very good resource and very accommodating, likes what he does, very knowledgeable about liquor laws, and you always feel free if you have questions. He's very, very helpful to businesses, and we have the approach that, we want to avoid problems, not address them.
That's what we're here for. Like I said,
a big part of this approach with myself and Mr. Magnuson is educational and preventative, and so, again, I'm happy that you met with him, and I'm sure that he'll be able to help you going forward if you need it.
I think so, too.
All right. Anybody in the public want to be heard on this application, either for or against? Seeing none, I will go to the board.
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to close the public hearing portion of this, and it's been seconded. Any further discussion on that? So all those in favor? Aye. All right,
Mr.
anyone
Chairman, I make a
opposed?
motion that we approve the transfer of the package store license.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the transfer of the liquor license. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So you're all set. That's been unanimously approved.
Thank you very much, Board.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, the next matter is not going to go forward tonight. That was the Cove. It was an automatic amusement license amendment. They wanted to add 10 electronic game machines. The licensing office got a letter saying that the manager was not available, and that he wants this to be rescheduled sometime convenient to our schedule in the month of September or October. there's no need to continue it to a date certain or any, for us to take any action, because he's gonna have to re-advertise anyway once that date's set, so we're just gonna take that off the list tonight. Third matter is Yarmouth Events LLC. Is anybody here on that? You wanna come forward? Phil, you never did get your memorandum in, did you, to Linda?
I made copies.
I have some. I can pass them out.
I have printouts of this entire deck here. You can take one.
Thank you.
I think I got two.
This is about this, we're supposed to read this now?
No, we'll be discussing, I mean,
Okay.
we'll be highlighting it. It's just a handout explaining some of the legal parameters of what we may or may not be able to do. You want to introduce yourself for the record, then I'll read the legal ad into the record, then you can proceed.
Surely. First off, it's a pleasure to meet you all. I'm Adam Epstein. I own Innovation Arts and Entertainment and the Yarmouth Events LLC. We're the operators of the Yarmouth Drive-In. We have been running, obviously, since July 12th. And it's a pleasure, once again, to meet you all in person.
Okay, thank you. Board of Selectmen, acting as the local licensing authority for the town of Yarmouth, has received applications from Adam Epstein on behalf of Yarmouth Events LLC for an amendment to the existing special entertainment license for, quote, live at Yarmouth Drive-In, close quote, events held at 669 Route 28 in West Yarmouth to continue through October 31st, 2020. And for special alcohol licensing to sell wine and malt beverages at entertainment events to be held on the following dates: August 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 28, 29, 30, and September 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Hours of alcohol sales will be 2 to 11 p.m. Entertainment events include drive-in movies and other forms of entertainment such as concerts, including live and recorded music, and public shows such as comedy shows. Drive-in movies will be shown on multiple screens, and performers will perform on a stage set between two screens. Sound will be transmitted to vehicles' FM radio via a transmitter for all types of entertainment with no amplification of sound. Hours of entertainment are 2 to 11 p.m. daily. Hearing will be held on Tuesday, August 11th, 2020 in the hearing room at Town Hall. The Selectmen's meeting begins at 6 p.m. Written comments will be accepted until 4:30 p.m. on Friday, August 7th, 2020 in the Selectmen's office at Town Hall. Verbal comments will be accepted at the hearing. Okay.
So, once again, it's a pleasure. I wanted to take a little bit of time just to talk a little bit about how things have been going, because where we're going Depends on where we've been. There's a lot's changed in the time since we started, and health and safety continues to be top of mind. Everything we do at the drive-in is designed to ensure that people have a good time, but they do it safely and to guarantee that we are not in any way a source of spread of coronavirus to either Yarmouth residents, tourists, visitors, or my staff, or the artists that are performing when we have an event. So we've got a series of processes and procedures I just wanted to kind of to go through, and I wasn't quite sure if this system was going to allow me to work directly through it. So I want to see if I can just make that work. But in case it didn't, that's why I brought the printout, just in case. So I wanted to make sure that everybody understood how seriously we took care of our guests, artists, and staff from a safety perspective, because it will translate also into our application for the extension of the entertainment license to build processes and procedures that will guarantee safety into the fall if you're to grant us the extension on our entertainment license. So the deck that I've printed out for you, of course, walks through a host of security means that bring us up to date with all the Governor Baker's current orders, and including the Massachusetts the travel order, which on page 3 asks us to ensure that anybody coming to the site has received the travel form, has filled it out, and if they come to our site, has been tested. Oh, thank you, Kathy. I guess we can go to page 3 now. The next one, I should just sit over there by the computer. There we go. Okay, so we have the entire, everybody coming to the site is notified, customers, artists, tech, staff, that if they're coming in from out of state, outside the quarantine zone, they're required to fill out the travel order form, and they're required to get a test and produce a negative result within 72 hours of arrival at the site. The next slide is, this is another procedure we put in place recently, with thanks to the health department, where we designed pods that allow us to keep people next to their vehicles, outside their vehicles, but safe and at least 10 feet away from the next nearest humans, while being surrounded on 3 sides by vehicles, creating a further barrier for preventing the spread of the virus. Our staff are all, the next slide, thank you again, all have their temperature checks, and they all wear masks nonstop when they're on site. Our guests are also required to wear masks whenever they're on site, except, of course, when they're eating or drinking. Then, of course, we have a series of procedures and steps that we discussed from the very beginning, which were that we have on the next slide, we have contactless entry, so your ticket is on a mobile device only. We have contactless concessions, where your ordering is online, and then you go to pick up the concessions only when you're instructed via text message. Artists, as I mentioned earlier, at the bottom there it says all artists traveling from out of the quarantine zone are also required to produce a negative test result within 72 hours of their arrival in Massachusetts. Next slide. All of our any equipment, any surfaces, period, that humans come in contact with are repeatedly cleaned. Whether it's the equipment being sanitized before and after every shift, things like traffic cones or restrooms, everything is cleaned all the time. We are instituting a backstage staff testing requirement, where all staff that come working backstage are required to have a COVID test, a PCR test, within every 2 weeks that they're working. Throughout our site, we have social distance markers to let people know where they should stand if there's a human around them or in front of them. The next slide. I mentioned this earlier. We have restroom hygiene, where the restrooms both have hand washing stations and hand sanitizers in them. We have separate restrooms for staff that also afford the same hygiene, sterilization, and sanitization. And same thing with backstage, which is also, the artists are kept separate from everybody else. Brings me to the actual purpose of the meeting, of my proposal today, which is the request for an extension of our entertainment license into up till Halloween. And we would be honored to extend the work that we've been doing, to continue to try to bring entertainment, both in movie form and live entertainment, to Yarmouth. And we hope and we believe that we've provided a great service for the people from the town, but also for tourists and people visiting, to give them something positive to do when outdoor activities are challenging. That's the essence of my application here, as far as the extension. And I hope that our success in terms of bringing people in is something that is seen in a positive light. And to my knowledge, we have not faced any criticism that hasn't been able to be overcome, any challenges that have been insurmountable, and I believe that we've provided a positive outlet that I think people can, well, anyway. So I'd love to hear if there are any thoughts or concerns on the extension.
Well,
You have actually two, are you just addressing the extension now, or are you addressing alcohol service? Just the extension?
I figured that it's up to you. I would, ideally, I'd love a yes on both, but.
No, but the way you phrased it, you said, I'd like to hear your thoughts or ideas on the extension, and I guess that prompted my question.
I was under the impression they were two separate applications.
They are, but they're obviously related. I mean,
the issue I have with taking them separately, though, is that he's checked on here, will alcohol be served on his extension, and he said yes, so, on the application.
Oh, yeah, I figured it was on select days.
well, I suppose theoretically you could allow the extension and deny the application, because you can put whatever conditions you want on the extension. There's a lot to talk about here. Have you looked at the governor's recent order?
Yes.
The order that went into effect today on outdoor venues? Let me see if I can find it.
If it's about the gatherings, is that what you were referring to? It was my understanding that order pertained to unstructured, disorganized gatherings like weddings and meetings and parties, not related to situations where you had a highly structured paid admittance where people were assigned specific locations where they could stand and sit. There is no mingling.
I think that, I mean, normally I would go approach this differently, but I think that kind of is a threshold question. Bruce, someone said Bruce is here, Bruce Murphy. Bruce, are you familiar with the latest order from the governor? Number 46.
I'm still going over it. It's still kind of new between how it goes into today's gathering. Restaurants don't have a limit set on them. So we're still looking at that. We go back to July, the governor's orders back in July, where they allow the drive-in outdoor venues. So we're trying to see how it all merges. It's kind of still coming forward.
Okay, so you don't have that figured out in your mind yet?
Correct. I'm looking at the social distancing aspect of it, making sure they have the 6-foot separation distance, social distancing.
We're gonna depart from this momentarily, but I just want to throw a few things out for the public's consideration and for the board's consideration. In the latest order, it says outdoor gatherings are limited to 25% of the maximum permitted occupancy that's on record with either the building department or any other municipal record holder. And if there's no such record, it's 8 people per 1,000 square feet where there is no occupancy limitation on record, and never more than 50 persons in a gathering in a single outdoor space. That's what that order says. And then it talks about the 6-foot physical distancing. And it says, all participants in indoor and outdoor gatherings must maintain at least 6 feet of physical distance from every other participant, aside from participants who are members of the same household. So if you're members of the same household, you can be within 6 feet, but if you're not members of the same household, you have to observe 6-foot distancing. And then it talks about different things that are included within the order, and it mentions without limitation, community, civic, public, leisure, sporting events, concerts, conferences, conventions, and it goes on, and other similar events or activities. These restrictions apply to gatherings in all public and private venues and locations in the Commonwealth, including private homes, backyards, parks, athletic fields, and parking lots. And then, this is the more interesting section. It starts off saying, this order does not impose a general capacity limitation on large, unenclosed public spaces, such as beaches, parks, and recreation areas. Capacity limitations for such spaces set by other rules and regulations shall continue to apply. The limitations of this order are instead specifically applicable to programs, celebrations, social gatherings, social outings, and similar events that draw together groups of people. Such gatherings are subject to the limitations of this order when they take place within large, unenclosed public spaces, such as beaches, parks, and recreation areas. And then it talks about indoor spaces. Then it talks about enforcement through the Board of Health and injunctions, $500 penalties, and the action that can be taken by the ABCC. So, I don't know. I mean, this was in my email. I don't remember whether it came through the licensing office of the town or whether it came through the chamber, one or the other. But I saw it and I read it over, and it seems to apply to this situation.
What I can say is that we're exceeding the 6-foot requirement by 67% by having a 10-foot space between groups of people. Because it's asked for 6 feet, it's a minimum of 10 in our space. The lot itself, I mean, surely you'd probably agree that 7.5 acres, 440,000 square feet, is not the same thing as a wedding or a restaurant. But we are providing space where hundreds of cars and people are kept separate from each other while observing some entertainment at a great distance. That is not the same thing as a wedding or a party or a restaurant, and that we're going to extreme effort to keep people separated. Mm-hmm. The one thing that we didn't even cover here was the number of staff we have to keep people separated and from mingling and from wandering around the park. We have 2 teams. We have our own personnel. We have about 50 personnel plus a second hired security team who are who are hired specifically to handle more direct enforcement of people, keeping people separated into their pods, their groups. I can't say that I see a clear direction from that order that addresses a 7-acre site with 440,000 square feet. When we are, if you take the eight people per 1,000 square feet ratio, that would allow 3,500 people to safely exist on this site at 440,000 square feet. We have at max 2,000 people split into pods, and that's a max if we ever hit that point. But we haven't yet, because we sell 448 vehicles at maximum capacity. So at maximum capacity, we have under 2,000 people in 7 acres of space, which is way, way less dense than the governor's order has requested or demanded.
Do you want to talk about the liquor part of this now?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
So one of the challenges that we have is we have obviously invested, if for those of you that have been out there, very aggressively in providing a great entertainment experience for the people that come. We've provided technically three LED video walls, two of which are 40 feet by 25 feet tall. They come at great expense, the entire operation. We've spared no expense, whether it's on personnel, security, staffing, cleaning, janitorial, entertainment, everything. We've invested to provide a great experience. It does come at a great expense. We are very hopeful that you would consider the benefit that alcohol can make to covering our bottom line. We are willing and able to adhere to all statewide and local, municipal, and town requirements for the sale and distribution of alcohol. And we know we can do it responsibly and ensure that people both behave, but also that our staff understands and follows the standard requirements from the state, from me on down to every person that touches alcohol. We've done it before. We've capably handled ourselves. We held and organized a festival that had the first licensed day permit to ever sell alcohol in Vineyard Haven on Martha's Vineyard, and we did it without one arrest happening. Not one. And we can do that here by following the same level of cooperation with the police, fire, emergency services, and all town personnel. I've met with Officer Magnuson, with Bruce Murphy, with Lieutenant Bryant, and Kathy Williams, of course, and I have already also, of course, informed myself about all the rules and regulations from the ABCC and Ralph Sacramone, and we are ready to make this step in terms of enhancing what we're offering for our guests, and we hope that you'd allow us to do so.
Okay, so you have, as I understand it, 3 different proposals for services of alcohol. Why don't you go through those one by one?
Yes, thank you. So we have, yes, there are 3 different potential alternatives for processes related to the sale and distribution of alcohol. The first is a standard beverage tent where people would visit and walk up to a waiter, salesperson, a tip-certified bartender, in essence, and order what they'd like. And they would be, but before that point, of course, they would be ID checked with an ID scanner, verifying the validity of their identification. And at that point, they would be given a wristband to ensure, I'm sorry, this is for the pickup and return to the site. So this is the one where customers will be able to order online, but they will have to enter the name, their birth date, and during the ordering process, they'll be sent a confirmation text message when their order is received. The order is ready. When the order is ready to pick up, they'll receive a text message telling them when it's time to pick up, so they don't go stand and wait and create congestion near the beverage area. When they get there, they'll be ID checked to make sure that the text message they receive match the identification that they provide. They'll be given a wristband so that person is identified as being of age. And then once they get into the area where the beverage tent is, there'll be markers for them to wait until the person in front of them has picked up their alcohol, and there are some safeguards in place to make sure that there aren't too many people in that pickup area at any one time, and then when their turn in line appears, they go to the front of the line, they pick up their order, and then they leave the restricted area and return to their suite with their beverages. And as I mentioned here, it says, that we have ushers, security, roaming monitors, of course, ensuring that people return to their suites with their alcohol, and that only people who have wristbands on are the people drinking. We have the second plan.
Can I stop you there just so everybody understands? Can you define what you mean by suite I know what you mean, but
Yes.
in terms of people that are following
Yes,
this, yeah.
the suites are actually in your deck that you have, so we can either revisit, go back, but it was in page 1, 2, 3, 4. Page 4 of your deck has an image of each vehicle suite. It's this, like this. So this is where people are sitting in their vehicle, sitting next to their vehicles in a 16 by 18 enclosed space. Oh, there you go. So once they go pick up their beverages, they'd return to their seating area next to their cars, and that's where they would be able to, that's where they're eating and watching the show and consuming the beverages. Technically, the only way.
So these people are outside their cars?
Correct.
I thought that the sound would only be transmitted through the radios in the cars.
Correct. Their windows are
So
open.
how can, they're gonna be able to hear it with the windows open?
Yes. In fact, they hear it in stereo because they're hearing it from 2 cars next to them.
Okay.
Actually, it's really nice.
And how many people can occupy one of those areas?
It's designed only to let people who arrive in one vehicle sit in there. So it's big enough that the people who travel in a car together can sit within that space comfortably. But most cars don't have more than 6 people that can fit in it anyway, legally. So the most people that would fit in one of those pods are 6.
Are those measured off, those spaces?
There is 16 by 18.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So that was option A.
Option A. Then option
B,
option B, after this planning. So
delivery to suite.
right. So this plan is where we have a dedicated area that is secured where we have servers in golf carts who would be responsible for delivering alcohol to the people who ordered it via golf carts. The drivers and the servers in those golf carts are tip certified waiters, servers. They've been trained. They understand all the rules. The ordering process is very similar. The customer orders the beverages online, enters their name and their birth date. Then the order is taken, it's packaged up and put in a box in the back of a golf cart, and then it is delivered to their suite. The server who's driving the vehicle will ID the person who purchased it, verify the validity of their ID. When their ID is validated, that person gets a wristband indicating they're of age, and then the person receives their purchase. As I mentioned in here, it says delivery driver and server will be tip certified. They'll be driving a golf cart. They'll be wearing a mask and gloves. They'll have ID scanners to verify the legitimacy of the ID, and they'll carry hand sanitizer. The delivery driver or assistant will check the ID of the person ordering the beverage. They'll be given the buyer will be given a wristband. The cans of beverages will be opened by the delivery person or assistant, and then put into the serving box and handed to the customer in the box.
Why are they opened by the serving person?
They can't be handed a closed beer.
Okay.
And of course, we will continue our monitoring to ensure that with Usher security roaming monitors to persistently view guests to make sure that the people drinking the alcohol, people holding that have wristbands. And of course, our policy is that no alcohol can be consumed while in a vehicle. So the guests will only be allowed to drink when they're sitting next to their cars.
Okay.
Okay, there are 2 potential scenarios for this. There is one location which happens to be by the MIG tent, and Kathy had reminded me that the MIG tent area will be used come Labor Day, so we decided we put this as one alternative location. There's a second location on page 2 here where we actually would put all the operational plans and beverage and storage of the beverages backstage in behind the stage in a nice secure area. Then the third alternative is a traditional one that's been done before. It is a beer garden where people go and they're ID'd upon entry, and then they're allowed to buy beverages and consume them from within this enclosed space. In this environment, with social distancing being required, it is something that we have not seen a lot of support for because of the requirement that people congregate. Something to include it because it's been done before, but everybody, all departments we've talked to are not in favor of this plan. Because the need of people gathering in one location to drink their beverages. And that's the nature of the three proposals for the sale and consumption of alcohol. Of course, like we have always indicated, we provide full liquor liability insurance, risk management policies, and then we of course have every person involved in the alcohol service, from me down to every manager, and then server will be tips trained and certified. The beer and wine will be purchased by the Massachusetts licensed wholesalers. Beer and wine will be stored in a locked storage refrigerated truck, and it will be secured so that it cannot be accessed on days when we do not have a license to sell alcohol. And it'll be only accessible by tip certified staff at all times. The other thing about the license is that it did list a lot of days, and it sounded like a very long list when you read it. It was, I believe, 18 or 19 days. Those are days that we have planned on live entertainment, and for certain, for expected days where we think we will have some live music or comedy.
Okay. Since you brought up that point, and I had passed out a memo that Phil Magnuson did to the board. I believe originally you stated that you wanted to get your license for a 30-day period, which is the maximum that a special license can be allowed for within a given year.
31-day licenses, yes.
And you wanted to, depending on events getting rescheduled, you wanted to have some flexibility
if it was possible
on the license. But Phil, that's one of the issues that he addressed in his memo. That's why I asked Phil to be here, because we can't do that legally, and he's going to tell you why. Go ahead, Phil. We can grant specific dates, but we can't grant a broad license where you kind of fill in the dates. Go ahead.
Mr. Stone and I spent some time talking about this. It's a little different than usual special license we grant, and so we were trying to figure out which pigeonhole it fits in the regulatory scheme. As far as the flexibility of service dates, when we grant one of these, we have to notify the ABCC which dates the license is good for. And I don't think once we do that, we can go back and change it. So we have to give notice of what dates we're issuing a license for. And so I don't think we can just say, it's a 30-day license, you pick the 30 days that you want over the next 2 months. I don't think we can do that. So this particular license has 19 specific days. There are 2 off days, August 31st and September the 1st. I was concerned about having the liquor on premises when they're not licensed. We've received some guidance from the ABCC on that. According to that guidance, which is a little bit cryptic, but according to that guidance, that is not a problem. So you have the authority to go ahead and permit that. So what you have before you is a request for 19 specific days with 2 days when they're not serving, when, as Mr. Epstein describes, the liquor would be well secured. So that's one issue, which is the flexibility of service dates. As I'm looking at the application today, I noticed for the first time that the application for liquor license is different from the application, that the applicant is different than the applicant for the use of the town property. The liquor license application is Innovation Arts and Entertainment, and the use of town property application is Yarmouth Events. Maybe Mr. Epstein could just clarify that for us.
Phil, I thought, am I wrong that on a special license, you can't have it held by a corporation, it has to be by an
You're absolutely right, and
individual?
I'm getting to that. It has to be in the name of a natural person who can be the representative
Of the corporation,
or
right,
LLC.
right. So it'd
this
have to be in his name, for
It would be to
example.
Mr. Epstein as representative of whichever corporation
Okay.
he's
Okay.
using.
I mean, if I need to be, it says who will be in charge, because I think that maybe the application was maybe just something that we got confused on, because it says who will be in charge, and I am listed.
Yeah, the ABCC regulation basically says special license
I think that might be statute.
may be
too.
issued only to a natural person, although the licensee may be a responsible manager acting on behalf of a corporation, partnership, or other entity. So would you, as responsible person, acting on behalf of whoever it would be? So that's how the license should come out if issued. Mr. Stone, do you want me to address some of the other issues
Sure.
in my memo?
Go ahead.
As far as the Plan A or Plan B, one of the things I struggled with here is that if you allow alcohol to be taken to the cars, either by the customer or delivered by cart, then you're defining the entire drive-in as part of the licensed premises. And with that comes an obligation to maintain a high degree of supervision and control. I thought it was a big challenge. However, in my meeting with Mr. Epstein, he went into great detail about how they maintain control with patrols, with 50 security people, and he may want to speak to you about that so that you can consider whether that's adequate to define the entire drive-in as part of the licensed premises. Again, I think he's got a good plan. The final thing is that because this is an ongoing commercial enterprise rather than a one-day wedding, we would be looking to have them comply with all of the commercial regulations in our rules and regulations. And one thing I would point out is that if you do elect to grant this license, I'd recommend that you require that the manager and all servers be tips trained from day one. For our regular licensees, we have a 14-day grace period, but this is a short-term license, so they should be trained from day one, and I don't think that will be an issue. So I think that there is a regulatory scheme which would allow the board to go ahead and do this. And if they want to come back for an additional 11 days, they would have to apply for those additional 11 days in later in September or in October.
Okay. Anything else? Does anybody have any questions of Phil? Okay. Is there anything you want to say at this point, Mr. Epstein, or anything you want to address that Officer Magnuson brought up?
Just that I do want to reinforce the security and monitoring that we do, because it's as we've discussed, we have a tremendous and sizable security team on site, because our primary goal from the beginning has been to ensure that there is not a lot of mingling of people. So we are observing and monitoring our attendees at all times. We have, with the budget afforded by selling alcohol, we have the ability to enhance that even further. But we have a team of over 50 people who are working to monitor people to ensure they stay within their parking suites already. So keeping an eye on them as far as what they're consuming is not an additional effort for us. The number of people we have working in security and staffing exceed by double the standard number. Normally you'd have one per like 200 people, and we have 50 staff members roaming the aisles nonstop. Entire event from the second we open doors until the event is done. So we are keeping eyes and ears open the entire time.
Okay, I'm going to go at this point to the public, and then I'm going to come back to the board. Does anybody from the public wish to be heard? Yes, sir. Why don't you take the microphone there, please? Identify yourself for the record.
Good evening. My name's Stephen Carroll. I live on Neptune Lane in Yarmouth. I'm a resident. I don't think it's in the town's best interest at this juncture to allow the applicant to start serving alcohol. What he's asking for here is permission over the course of 3 weeks, over the next couple months, to serve alcohol from 2 o'clock in the afternoon until 11 o'clock in the evening to individuals in or about their automobiles in the middle of an open field. The proposition that somehow they're going to be able to control that, I don't have a lot of confidence in. I don't think it's in the town's best interest for that to occur here. I've been, I went to this drive-in shortly after they opened with my kids. And, it was fine. It was great. We went, it was great. Although just going in the front, trying to get in and pay, they couldn't process the payments in much of a timely manner. And I understand that's fine. When we get in there, my kids were ordering food. They couldn't process the food order. They actually refunded the money because they never got the food process done properly. So maybe those bugs have been worked out, maybe they haven't. But that's talking about paying to get in somewhere and talking about, ice cream or some food at a place. The proposition that they're going to be able to control, from what I saw here, 459 automobiles with alcohol in them. So the applicant has said safety is his priority here. Okay, well, let's not give alcohol to people in their automobiles. That seems like a basic principle here. So the idea that you're going to be able to control this and do all that certainly is not in the town's best interest. And I don't think I can control it. 2 weeks ago, I was at my house in the neighborhood there. Friday night, and I think it might have been one of the live shows they had there. I listened to a continuous 2 hours of people leaning on their horns because this comedian apparently was doing a great job. And bravo for her. He's absolutely right. Couldn't hear her. I could see, couldn't hear anything she was saying because it's through the FM radio. But you can be darn sure I heard those horns 2+ hours. Did they do anything to stop the people from beeping the horns? Absolutely not. Let them roll the horns out a couple hours till almost 11 o'clock at night. What can you, here's a simple idea. Tell the performer, tell them to stop beeping the horns or you stop performing. No one did that. Not a single person did. 2+ hours. That's fine, I'm an adult. I don't know how the people with small children were getting their kids to sleep. So the proposition that it's a good idea to serve alcohol to people in an open field and then turn them loose on the town of Yarmouth at 11 o'clock at night doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The applicant's looking to extend all this until Halloween. I think we're going to have a lot more scary nights before Halloween if we're going to allow this to occur here. So I think it's in the town's best interest not to allow this permit to go forward. The movies have been fine. I haven't had an issue with the movies, but the live shows, there was a band concert the next night. More horns, more horns. If you can't control people beeping horns, how are you going to control alcohol? I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Anyone else? We had an individual asked if they could participate remotely, but unfortunately we don't have that capability. I think we did get a couple emails that I'll read into the record. I don't know if you have any, Dan, but there was one by a Maureen Carser, C-A-R-S-E-R, dated August 7th, and one from Mary Ellen Doherty, dated August 9th. So the first one from Maureen Carser, dated August 7th. Greetings. I'm writing to express my strong opposition to granting a liquor license to the drive-in entertainment site offering alcohol to people already in cars. Increases the chances of impaired operators driving from the site. Also, who else is in the car with the person buying the alcohol? Sharing liquor with underage passengers is inevitable. How would stopping this be enforced? with police patrolling the venue, peering into cars and asking for IDs? Question mark. Perhaps if this is a family entertainment, people can enjoy it without alcohol for a few hours. Maureen Carcer, Old Main Street. The other one from Mary Ellen and Ed, Sikonski, Sikonski. Dear select people, we are direct abutters to the Route 28 Yarmouth Drive-In property, living at 28 Niagara Lane in West Yarmouth. We are generally supportive of using the drive-in land for festivals and events and family movies with patrons, using the car radio for audio, but we do have increasing concerns. One, the general concern is that the space is being used heavily for entertainment purposes, not recreational as the town's vision. If this is deemed successful for the town, it could become entrenched. Two, using the space for family movies, especially during this pandemic, is a great idea and has not affected us. However, the noise generated by musicians is unacceptable in our neighborhood. On the night of August 7th, with our windows shut, we were kept awake by the band. We were promised that noise would not be an issue. The schedule for the balance of this year includes several music dates. The provider must address the noise issue. 3, including alcohol at these events would be absurd. This could lead to increased noise, increased monitoring for COVID compliance. Cars and alcohol don't mix. We'd like to participate in the hearing on Tuesday. Is remote attendance an option? Regards, Mary Ellen and Ed Sikonski, 28 Niagara Lane in West Yarmouth. I think that's all the correspondence we have.
We had a letter from the CEDC, just the CEDC's recommendation.
Excuse me?
Community and Economic Development Committee sent us a memo.
Yeah, do I have that? Is that in the packet?
No.
Came in late today.
Okay, I did see it on the email, but I don't have it. Does anyone have it?
To the Board of Selectmen from Peter Q. Smith, Chairman, Drive-In Site Entertainment License dated August 7th. The Community and Economic Development Committee, known as the CEDC, is in support of the request to extend the entertainment license for Drive-In Site through October. The goal of the committee is to promote shoulder season activity in Yarmouth, to extend the tourism season, which is vital to many Yarmouth businesses. With this in mind, the committee is in full support of the request to extend the entertainment operations at the drive-in site through October. The availability of entertainment options will be critical for the town's ability to continue to attract visitors into the fall season. On the topic of alcohol service at the site, the CEDC defers to the Selectmen as they are the licensing authority. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this project.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy. So these folks wanted to come in. I don't know. They wait. Huh? Oh, they were Grace. Okay. All right. So.
Make a
Guess
motion to close
now-
the public hearing.
Why don't we go to the board for any questions they might have? Eric, do you have any questions?
After we close the public hearing, I'll be happy to.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, the public portion of the hearing is closed. Who wants to start off the discussion?
Well, I'll start by making a motion that we support the extension of the license through October 31st and not with alcohol service.
All right, so you're making a motion to extend only the entertainment
To
license?
approve and the only reason I'm making reference to the alcohol is because
It's in the application, okay.
and not,
You just want to make that clear that by extending the entertainment license, you're not indirectly extending or granting permission to serve alcohol?
Correct.
Okay, that's Tracy's motion.
I'll second that.
And we have a second by Eric. Any discussion on that?
Can I just have some clarity?
Sure.
Chairman, I'm assuming.
Clarity's always good.
Yeah, just so that I understand, and for people that are watching, this is just to extend it, but not, what we're going to deal with separately with the alcohol question. Okay, just want to make that clear. I support it as well.
Aye.
Aye. You ready?
Okay, so, we have a motion, a second, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. So that passes unanimously. Now, on the second request for the alcohol, does anybody want to make a motion on that?
Make a motion not to support that application at this time.
Okay.
I just want to make a few comments about it. I think, I understand the impotence for it, but I think we were sold more of a family event. I'm concerned with a few of the same concerns that our commenters have now. Hopefully I know you've invested a lot of money, hopefully it's financially feasible with the extension and what you've done now. I just think adding that to something that we thought was going to be a short-term trial is just not something I think that we should do at this point in time. I think when we go back for a permanent thing, perhaps next year, we can look at it in its totality. But I thought more movies would be there, more family events type of thing is what my impression of it. It's great that they have the live entertainment. I just think it causes a lot of other questions which could potentially jeopardize the entire effort, in my opinion. Meaning neighbors' complaints and things of that sort. I think that there's enough issues now with sound and some of the things that have been brought up that I don't think we need to add to it at this time.
Anyone else?
I agree. I think that, in all fairness, when we had the discussion about the original license, I think I said that night that I would not be supportive if alcohol were part of the application. So, true to what I said that night, I'm gonna remain. I'm gonna maintain that position and not be supportive now. That's not to say that you could not use this year as an opportunity to demonstrate diligence in the operation, and we could reconsider next year. I'm just saying that for tonight, I'm going to remain true to my word and not be supportive of this.
Mark?
Thank you. In looking this, I think what I'm looking for is sort of consistency in terms of our allowance of alcohol on the site. In the past, when we've licensed activities, we've allowed alcohol to be used on the site, but it's usually under certain conditions. So for me, an outright ban, I think is a bit excessive. I think the question I'm wrestling with is, what are the appropriate conditions in terms of limiting the use of alcohol? And that at the moment is what I'm struggling with. So I honestly believe that if we're going to, in whatever decision we make tonight, I believe will be instructive in terms of future applicants. Others will be looking to our decision tonight to give them some guidance in terms of how they might want to utilize the site for other events. I believe on St. Patrick's Day we had alcohol on the site. I believe we had a country and western festival. We had alcohol on the site. These were activities, these were events that went on into the evening. I'm also cognizant of the fact that I don't believe for a minute that there isn't one vehicle or more on site without alcohol, in the cooler, in the back seat, with people consuming. So for us tonight to think that somehow we're going to be able to prevent alcohol from being used on the site is a little bit naive. So I think there is a value in trying to regulate it, to try to control it. I do believe the use of it also makes the site, it enhances its viability as a venue. I mean, if we want this site to be used as an entertainment venue in the future, I think we need to be somewhat flexible. I'll admit, I'm struggling a little bit with what the conditions are, because I think whatever conditions we set, I think, like I said, they'll be instructive for other applicants, other people that are using it. But to ban it altogether is a bit, for me, excessive. The other thing that I've been concerned about as well is the health aspects of this. I mean, these ground rules keep changing from the state, and I just want to be reassured that of the proposals that we're considering and what we're looking at tonight, that they've been thoroughly vetted by our health agent and the Board of Health, and that what we're being asked to consider is consistent and is not outside the boundaries of what's being permitted or allowed. And I'm looking for some confirmation of that. If I could receive it from the health agent, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Mark. I think one of the, well, there's a number of issues here, and frankly, a number of problems in my mind. The first, and I'm not gonna vote on this basis, but if you had come to us initially with this proposal, when we were considering whether or not to go with you or the sandwich proposal, we might have voted differently. We might have said, this guy wants too much, we'll go with the local people that want to keep it within what we think is a reasonable reference. But it went from movies. I mean, if you go on a website now, I don't see any movies coming up throughout the rest of this month. Most of it's like music and other forms of entertainment. But back to the alcohol. When we've licensed this facility for alcohol, it's usually only been like 1 or 2 days in the past. And they were in tents that were well-defined and well-lit. And there was access to the customer, which isn't your problem because the coronavirus has changed all that. But to determine if somebody's intoxicated takes some time. It takes some observation. It takes some observance of detail. Before the coronavirus, the Yarmouth Restaurant Association has extensive seminars on this, training wait staff at various restaurants and bars and package stores. And Phil Magnuson, who spoke tonight, gives seminars to owners and managers. It's involved. It takes a certain amount of interaction with that patron to know what the symptoms of intoxication are. And serving intoxicated people is extremely dangerous, especially if they're operating motor vehicles. I personally don't feel, even with 50 people, that could be taken under the kind of control I would like to see to avoid not only that, but who gets access to that alcohol. I don't think it's any fault of yours. I think if you had a tent and we didn't have a coronavirus problem and it was well lit and people were going up there one at a time and you had these opportunities to make these observations and to check their identification in detail, I think that's a totally different animal than what you're proposing. And I don't think your proposal is through any fault of yours. I think the dynamics of the coronavirus make it an unworkable situation, in my mind.
All of the scenarios were designed to afford observing and monitoring. If observing and monitoring is the ultimate goal, then the beer garden possibility is there for you to review. It's the same plan that's already been used on the site in the past. And we could space the tables such that there is plenty of space separating individuals. So well, the reason I put those 3 proposals in front of you, Paul, was that you would be able to choose the one that you felt afforded those kind of protections as you would wish. I designed all 3 with high degrees of safeguarding and monitoring to solve both the monitoring and the COVID-related issues. So if monitoring is what you'd like, then the beer garden solution is the best one there. Now, the other thing I do want to address is I didn't put it in the proposal because I thought it was a little bit more obvious, but we've shown 26 family movies in under 3 weeks. 26. We've had 3 bans. Okay. So we have committed and followed through on exactly what we promised. And unfortunately, when you sell 150 cars at $30 a piece, you generate $4,000 approximately in revenue. 50% of that revenue goes to the movie studio. So you're left with $2,000 left over to pay your staff. So if we're going to create a sustainable business model, movies are a fun part of it, but they're not going to help you create a facility like what I built. So we're trying to create a diverse range of entertainment options in order to both bring people in, which is the one thing I promised you, was that I was going to bring people to Yarmouth from other places. And when they can see movies in Hyannis, Wellfleet, Mendon, the Rustic Drive-In, there is nothing unique about viewing a movie. You're going to get only Yarmouth people coming because people can go to Wellfleet, it's more convenient. They can go to Mendon, it's more convenient. They can go to Hyannis. So, and we're all showing the same movies because there's no first-run movies out. So we're all showing E.T., we're all showing toys, we're all Toy Story, we're all showing Cars. There's nothing new to offer. So the only way to create something special here is by offering a wide range of entertainment options, which is the very thing that I committed to from the very beginning. And but we've continued to mingle and mix family movies into that as well, even at a loss. We've done it. We commit to you to do that, and we have honored that commitment. But in order to finance those movies, and without any sort of sponsorship, because we haven't had time to generate that kind of support, we are using live entertainment, which are filling restaurants and hotels. People coming from Boston. The band that performed on August 1st was a band called Ripe. They're based in Boston. Every zip code for every ticket purchaser came from the Boston metro area. Those people came out. They dined in your restaurants. They stayed in your hotels. Frankly, they ate at other people's restaurants. Okay, they bought popcorn and some other stuff we had, but they had a great night, and they came out and they saw what Yarmouth is about.
And they did it with no alcohol. And you committed also to...
They did it without buying alcohol on site.
I agree, and I agree with Mark's point, but I mean, I think that to Mike's point, when you were here just a month ago, we were told no alcohol. And
it was in my application, and I said I would be willing to do it without it, but I was hoping to prove myself to you. And I feel like we have. We've put all the great systems in place at great expense without worrying about that, showing you that we can manage a site competently and fixing problems as they've come up, to the point that I think we've earned the respect of the police force, the police department and the health department and the fire department. We've listened to advice, we've factored it in and pivoted and instantly changed things at your request. We do not have pride we don't consider pride a virtue. We do not say it's our way and that's the only way. We are always looking for advice and always looking for input.
No, I have a question for him when you're done.
Just so that I did hope that I could prove myself to you and put my name and my reputation on the line and show you that I was competent and capable of handling new opportunities as they emerge. So I agreed to withdraw the alcohol element during the beginning, but I did it in the hopes that you would see that we were the right partner here and that we were the partner that would listen and make changes and put systems in place to secure the safety of everybody that came. And even when we had the mishap on the event that the speaker identified at the beginning, where we had a problem with our food service, we fired Porky's the following morning. They failed. They had 170 orders come in. They only fulfilled 80. They were fired within 12 hours. We cannot accept mediocrity. We don't accept it from our staff. We don't accept it from our vendors. We don't accept it from our performers. So we are here to protect and defend a fabulous entertainment experience, and we know our audience is looking for that thing where they can have the beverage on site rather than trying to sneak it in. We want to build systems and put them in place where we can control it and regulate it and ensure that the safety and that there's no contraband. It's not something that people are trying to be secretive about. They're out in the open drinking it outside of their vehicles, not inside. We know we have the systems in place, and we can enhance them even further to ensure that that is successfully added to our entertainment license, only for select days. We're not looking for a blanket opportunity. We're looking for specific days that we expect to have performers where we know the audience is interested in having a beverage, and they're going to try to go to a bar, to a restaurant or something, or to a package store and buy it and try to get it in. We would prefer that they avoid those things by informing them that they can get it on site, but that it'll be regulated and monitored.
Adam, you're a good advocate for your business, but with all due respect, your subjective intent, where you said, well, we intended to prove ourselves and then come back, that wasn't the criteria upon which we based our initial decision. And you had a competitor.
I have pictures of what that competitor is doing in Falmouth, and trust me when I say it is not something they should be proud of.
No, but that's not fair to that person either. I mean, to say, well, you know, he said no alcohol, but inside, he didn't tell us, but inside, this is what his intent was. I mean, how can we function credibly as a board on that basis?
Well, I was upfront about wanting alcohol at the beginning, and I agreed to.
But you said it wasn't a big deal either way.
No, I did. I said I would withdraw it if that was something important to you.
Yeah, well, it was.
And now, but that was before you knew what I was about, and you knew what kind of systems we put and what kind of infrastructure we invest in. But now that you know me better, and you know what kind of team, if you knew at the beginning what kind of person I was and what kind of operation I built and what kind of team I put together, perhaps you might have made a different decision, but it's our first time working together.
Right.
And you've already had alcohol on that site before. So I'm not asking for
on a much
any
more limited basis.
Well, then let's talk about a limited basis.
In not only area, but in duration. One or 2 days.
Why don't we talk about what duration and limited area you'd like? I'm game. I'm just asking to be treated just like everybody else who's put a license forth or an application forth in the past. I'm asking for nothing special. I'm asking for exactly the same treatment.
Except that there's a pandemic now and there wasn't then, and that does complicate it.
And we've handled ourselves well in the face of that pandemic. We are not going to be a source of the spread of the virus, and we've put systems in place to make sure that that won't happen. So all I ask you is that what would it take to do exactly the same thing you've done in the past?
Mark, what?
I'm just interested in getting an answer to my question from the health agent, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Just repeat your question.
Yeah, it was so long ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. Yeah, I'm asking if the what's being proposed is compliant. I know there are some aspects of the most recent order that you're somewhat uncertain of, but I'm trying to get a sense of, is this compliant with the governor's?
I feel, in my opinion, it's in compliance.
It is in compliance.
That's my opinion right now.
Okay. Thank you.
The drive-in and entertainment was allowed when they reopened.
Are you talking about the alcohol or
I think the
About
steps.
the spacing and everything else.
I think the steps that have been taken above and beyond the duty that is needed for social distancing and separation. I think the new governor's orders, we would have to look at them. I don't see them. I still feel that we would probably be in compliance. I guess the question would be, that's my interpretation. I feel very comfortable. Should the state come down and want to overrule me, that would be something on Adam, but I feel comfortable the direction that we're heading right now.
Yeah, and I'm particularly interested in the aspect of the service and the arrangements with respect to alcohol.
On alcohol, the Board of Health did not make a determination on the 3 plans.
Okay.
They said the best plan that they looked at that would prevent a gathering would be the service delivery system,
Okay,
not the waiting in line or a beer garden where everybody would sit.
I see.
It would
So
have
the
to be
service
service.
delivery system would be the most compliant option
Correct.
if alcohol were to be allowed. Okay.
Agreed.
Thank
But
you.
you didn't consider serving minors or intoxicated people or anything like that when you evaluated those
I
options?
think the system that was put in place, that was explained to us, was how they're checked, and Adam can go over that again, how they're checked when they order, but then when it's served and delivered, they're checked again for compliance, and that also gives us another time to look at to make sure that people are in their pods where they're supposed to be, and those pods are roped off. It was hard to see, but they're roped off, and the car is in the roped off pod besides the next one. So that also gives the server another chance to look at alcohol compliance before he issues it to somebody. He can look at to see who's in the pod.
If I could, just,
Go ahead.
these are tip-certified bartenders. They are the ones who you want making eye contact with people to determine intoxication. These are not random, like the servers are tip-certified like they'd be bartenders in a bar. So when they're driving to deliver an order, they're going to be able to see whether the person is intoxicated or not. They're going to interact with that person even more than a typical bartender would, because they're going to actually have to engage that person to observe their monitor, check their ID to make sure they're the purchaser who ordered the beer. If the person is slurring, if they're intoxicated, we're going to be able to tell, especially the tip-certified trained staff we have.
All right, anything else? I want to put this to a vote. So we have a motion not to allow the alcohol during the period during which the license is to be extended. So all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed?
I'm a nay.
All right, so that motion, which denies the service of alcohol, passes by a vote of 3 in favor, 1 against. Thank you.
Eric.
So all 19 days were rejected?
Yes.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, Kathy, do you need any language for the license amendment?
Just approval to have Dan give an authorization to amend the license for the times, because right now the license agreement only goes through September.
So the licensing agreement is a separate issue than the license itself, is that what you're saying?
The site license, use of town property.
I think that would be together with the motion to extend. We would have to, you can't have one without the other,
No,
correct?
but this would have specifically allowed me to sign on your behalf the license to be on the
Make-
site.
So moved.
We have a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, so Dan's authorized to sign the license agreement on behalf of the board, okay? Return the meeting to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is COVID-19 updates. And the subsection is update on beach access and parking compliance.
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Excuse
if
me.
I may.
Yep.
This was put on at discussion request by members of the board as it relates to the email correspondence that we've had related to beach access, particularly at Grays Beach and Dennis Pond. The town team met internally last week as it relates to what would be the options this late in the season, what would be the options that we thought we could recommend to you that would be feasible to implement. In that meeting was Jeff Colby, Director of Public Works, Amy Howell, Interim Director of Recreation, Pat Armstrong, Community Services Director, and Police Chief Frank Frederickson, and Deputy Chief Kevin Lennon. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. So we went over a variety of different scenarios, residents only. One of the challenges there would have been, of course, determining how you would ensure that it was residents only. We don't presently staff either locations for parking lot control, so that was a challenge there in and of itself. The other issue was issuing a sticker scenario. We didn't feel that this late time in the season that would be effective. So what we did, because we had some limited success with it in the past, and some of the neighbors had indicated that it alleviated the scenario, was ensure a dedicated police patrol in that area from for the morning and the afternoon to ensure that the no parking restrictions, particularly at Grays Beach, are enforced. Also using some of the traffic code as it relates to parking in a street, not allowing 10 feet of access in a lane. At Dennis Pond particularly could be implemented there. We figured that would be an option as well. And we also discontinued pavilion rentals at the beach because on weekends particularly the pavilion could be occupied by as many as 60 or 70 people, occupying a good sum of the spaces available at the beach, and they would typically be there all day. So what we presented to you in the package tonight was a memorandum from Chief Frederickson as it relates to the parking enforcement activity that will take place. The other thing I also included in there was an updated parking policy that was asked about as far as ticket, how that process goes through and where we can write tickets. And then the third component is there seems to be a lot of confusion as to who can get a pass, if you will, at Dennis Pond. So the regulations for Dennis Pond access are in there as well. And in the audience tonight is Director Colby, Chief Frederickson, and Interim Director Howell to answer any questions you might have.
Very good.
And these were, by the way, only an interim stopgap to get us through to the end of the season, and in which we recommend in the off season we'll come up with a more comprehensive set of recommendations for the board.
That was going to be my suggestion. Is we're not going to solve anything this year. I think that we're in a unique situation where people aren't going to work and they are going to the beach, which has caused the
Beach bike.
It's a part of the problem, but. I think that we need to dedicate some time over the winter to this so that we can be prepared for something to implement next year. And, one of the things I had thought about was an inventory of all the beaches, what the status was as to parking, whether it's permit, unpermitted, unless Dennis Pond and Grays Beach are the only two non-sticker beaches in town. So that was my thought. I mean, I have no interest in spending a lot of time on this tonight because we're not going to solve it tonight. We need a workshop over the winter and to dedicate at least a meeting to ironing the policy out.
Tracy?
Well, I mean, I don't know what's different now than the last time we talked about it. We've had these concerns for weeks. I think, the gentleman that spoke at the beginning, the signage about the current was something that we had discussed, and it's a real issue. Resident only, I think, it's going to be a long discussion that we could talk about, but you have other items there that will block. I think a little bit more difficult. I think we have to put a person there, a booth and a person, and somebody needs to be monitoring it. I have concerns with it being a full-blown police officer, as I expressed the last time. If we could put a parking attendant down there, I think that is really the best-case scenario. I think that it's a huge resource for our police officers to have to do this. And, I hate to say it, but I don't want to sound rude, but you can't fix stupid, okay? We can regulate it all you want. If people are going to park in the middle of the road and block traffic, we can do anything we want here. They're going to do it. So I think, the action that we've taken over the last few weeks and cracking down and towing or ticketing, I think has been huge, and I think it needs to continue because you have to change people's behaviors. There's not a whole lot we can do. If people don't know that they're parked in the middle of the road and they're going to park right next to a sign that says no parking, I mean, come on.
Thanks.
But those are my comments for now. I do think, I agree with Eric, we need to have a lengthy discussion about it, and It's not just this beach, but there is a parking requirement for Dennis Pond. They do have stickers for the people with minor. It's
Is that
for
a
people with
Yarmouth
minor.
Port sticker? Or
No,
a
it's,
Yarmouth
Oh, it's a
it's
Dennis
the-
Pond pass.
It's a separate
specific
sticker.
to that, and if you have a minor or a child under the age of
16.
12.
I think it's 6. I thought it was 16.
No, it's
now.
12, I think.
because that
New
was given to the town by somebody who wanted it to be used by the youth of this community, so you have to have that specific sticker, and it's been a parking nightmare down there for
Six
years.
spots.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well, they
but
give you a-
again, people park right in front of the no parking sign, all down the street. I mean, it's,
All right, I'm gonna
Mr.
just-
Chairman, if I might, on that issue, though,
Yeah.
I did look up the statistics on that. We've issued out 28 passes. They're actually like,
Dennis Pond.
8.5 by 11 pieces of paper. Last year, there was over 100 issued. And in your
you get
packet,
to town hall to get it issued.
it's under age 16. So,
Is it 16?
Yeah, regulations here.
All right,
So-
before we proceed much further,
No,
Dan, you all set?
yeah.
Okay. Before we proceed much further, I know Jeff has been here, Amy's here, the chief is here. I'm going to see if, Chief, would you like to speak or say a few words, speak to this issue? Because I know you've worked on it and you're here tonight, so I appreciate you
I
being
can't
here.
find it. Where the hell is it?
Good evening. Kind of when we went around the horn the other day, talked about what to do. Pretty simple but we can't get any regulation issues taken care of by the end of the summer. When we put somebody down there, we can clean it up. But short of finding somebody to do that, the best solution was to put one of our people down there. Very effective. We're not trying to write a lot of tickets, but we've written a few. But usually when we're there on time, we can prevent people from parking, and it seems to work. So we're split between Dennis Pond and Grays Beach, and it's working well. But I went around there looking in, taking some pictures, the different beaches, some other options, but it's a long process, permitting, and of course, all the other types of regulations that you have to consider over the winter, and then you have to make the decision whether you want to make it resident only or whatever that might look like. That's up to you, but we'll just enforce whatever you do.
Well, we
We'll
have,
some input.
if I can just comment, we have received emails, or at least I have seen them, from two people who have indicated that once the enforcement presence picked up, I mean, the message was much of the problem in both of the beaches was taken care of.
Yeah.
So I would agree with what the sentiment that's been expressed tonight, that doing something a little bit more substantive, like changing. I mean, we have had residents asking us to make, resident-only designations, and I think it's obvious that that's going to require more work and more time. I know there are people watching tonight trying to figure out what we're likely to do on this topic. There are people that have been here hoping that we might be able to do that. And I'll save that for the next agenda item. Dan, maybe you can go through the process. I think people deserve to know the kind of things that we need to do and the steps that need to be taken if a beach is going to be converted to resident only. And I do this principally so that the folks that are paying attention to this whole topic have the opportunity to understand the amount of work that has to go into it. And so we'll defer that discussion to the next subpart. But I do know that at least the residents that have been sending me emails have appreciated the stepped-up enforcement and have basically applauded the town for doing it and have indicated it works.
Well, it makes a difference when it's organized and
Right.
it's not so hectic and people trying to get an edge on each other.
Right.
Although some people get disappointed because they plan on driving and parking, but it works, so we'll keep it up for the rest of the summer and pray for some rain here and there during the day. Okay.
Appreciate that. Okay, thanks, Chief. Amy, do you have anything to add tonight? No? Mr. Colby? Like I said, you're here. You're spending a lot of time here tonight, so here's your chance.
Yes, Jeff Colby, Public Works Director. I think the chief, laid out a good plan. It's, late in the summer, and we're happy to put, if that's the board's decision, a gate attendant there. But it's because it's so late in the season. Recruitment's been a real challenge this year. Seasonal staffing. We're going to start to see some of our gate attendants at other locations leaving for the summer, going back to school and other things. So just the timing of it for implementation is very difficult. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Anybody else on? Wait a second. Hold on a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't believe that we were setting this up for public
No,
comment.
but these folks have been here since the beginning this evening, and they were waiting patiently in their car, if you could.
Hold your comments and concerns. Let me just go to the fire chief, and then I will give you a chance to speak, okay?
Thank you. Phil Simonian, Fire Chief. Anything we can do to better our access for emergencies down there would be greatly appreciated, because in my experience getting down there for a drowning or any other medical emergency, when the cars are lining the road or trying to come out, there's very little room for our apparatus or even our ambulance, which isn't as big as the pumper. The big thing, too, is we have a small boat that we can use to access when we have a drowning there, and that's towed by a pickup truck at Station 2, and that's very difficult even to get down there and get that boat on the boat ramp when they've congested that area. So we appreciate the efforts, but if we can, make that better for us just for the emergency access, that would be huge and beneficial.
So you're on record in supporting the added enforcement, is that?
I am.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
Chief.
you.
All right.
Are our no parking signs back up?
Yes.
They've all been up?
They have.
Okay. I'm sorry, was there somebody else? Amy, okay, you do want to speak. Okay, before you passed.
All right. I just want to say, too, there's kind of two clear separate issues that we're dealing with at the beaches, and I know you guys have been getting a lot of emails. Dan, as well, he passes them on to us, is, we have our regular beaches, which we have been shutting down on the weekends by 9:30 every day, and it's a trickle-down effect. That's realistically just because of COVID. We're shutting them down just because we're trying to maintain social distancing on the beaches and allow for that to happen. And then we get the sheer amount of walk-ins afterwards. So when we shut down at 9:30, a lot of times, unfortunately, we're not opening back up till 2:30. And the residents aren't used to that because it's not a common, occurrence if we were taken out of the COVID situation. And so a lot of those complaints and emails that we were getting for changing a lot of the beaches to residences is realistically because of that. I mean, we have about 2 weeks left in the season. It's not realistic to change at this point. Hopefully next year at this point we're back to normal operations. But if we're not, we would take kind of what's happened this year into consideration if we have to go that route. And then the second issue would be the Bass Hole Dennis Pond, which has kind of been brewing for the last 5 years. So I think it's just important to note, and I think COVID did exacerbate those issues this summer as well. But I know that we're getting emails for both, and I just want to make it clear too that's kind of two separate issues, and when we're handling them. So.
Thank you for making that clear. Appreciate it. Bruce Murphy, please speak.
Bruce Murphy, Director of Health. I just want to mention one other point is on Flax Pond, the cabanas that are rented there. They're rented under what the governor allows, which is good. They only rent to 25. But that's an unstickered pond, so there could still be 200 people using the pond. There's no enforcement on the weekends. And that's a busy spot from talking to Amy. She did check to make sure all the cabanas were not rented to people from a state that might be, out of state. But that's an area that needs to be looked at also. And we're trying to figure out how we can monitor that with a lot of people on weekends with no supervision.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to indulge. We have two people here from the public. Ladies before gentlemen. Come. Oh, you're together. Wow, even better.
I just wanted to reiterate.
Can you tell us your name and where you're from?
My name's Tina Beasley. I live on 6A in Yarmouth Port.
Okay.
Robert
Connors.
Same. So we've been there for 20-plus years. I just wanted to speak about it, saying it's not just because of COVID. COVID has enhanced the situation. It's so bad down there at Grays Beach. It's been progressively getting worse as far as like residents wanting to go and enjoy the beach. And it's been probably like the past 4 or 5 years, like the young woman had said in the past, it's been brewing and something needs to be done. And we'd be more than happy to, show our support for something for next year. We understand it's too late this year, but next year we'd like to be, involved in that. And I just wanted to voice our own opinion for what we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years, because it is like the free beach and parking and, it's just been overpopulated and overcrowded, and people who live they can't really even enjoy it because, we can't get in, we can't, it's awful. So, that being said, I'll pass it to the big guy.
So I guess one of the questions is a residence only. What is that considered? What would you consider a residence only?
Well,
As opposed to a town of Yarmouth?
That's,
So it's a town of Yarmouth
residence.
sticker, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct,
so
yeah.
why couldn't we do that now, just like Mashpee just did? And
We would literally, we're going to let the town administrator explain the process for actually going through this. It will take quite a bit of time. We can explain it, momentarily. So.
But he's been getting my emails for the last 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. And
No, I
finally
understand.
got a response
I
when
understand.
I added the chief to the
I understand.
response.
I understand. We can answer your question. Is there anything else you want to add to your comment?
Yes, so I've also talked for the last couple of years to try to fix the trailer parking signs. Because there is one handicap parking spot there.
You're talking about at which
At
partic-
Gray's Beach.
At Gray's Beach.
He referred me to Carl. Carl said he was going to take care of it a couple of weeks ago. Carl did not take care
Oh,
of it.
actually, he did. I was informed by the building commissioner that the way in which that parking is presently configured is compliant with ADA, so that, if you were going to do something different, we'd have to make those accommodations, whatever that is. I'm not the ADA compliance person like the building commissioner is, but he did indicate that it would be a problem to change it to do what you did. I specifically asked him that scenario.
Okay.
But that's not to say that parking and the array of spaces and all that shouldn't be looked at. It needs some effort. The other thing that we'd be concerned about, I believe, if I recall correctly from a couple of years ago, the boat launch there was funded with state money, so that's also got to be allowed available to the public. You can't put a restriction on that, and how do you accommodate that situation? There also is the recent addition of kayak racks there and the kayak activity that goes on there. And for the first time since I've been here in 4 years, the introduction of a mass amount of individuals from going over to the Chapin side, that's an interesting factor that is maybe that's been occurring over the years, but to the level that it seems to be occurring from people who are sending us emails because the access over there is so difficult now is certainly something that, coupled with the beach restrictions that Amy just spoke about, have really pushed everybody around looking for available places to go, and that just makes it worse. If they know if they can't get in over there, they can come on our side. It's no charge. And to the chief's point, this all happens early in the day, so unfortunately for the residents, they're completely locked out. So one of the easy things we could do is what we mentioned today is just stop the pavilion rentals for now, because that clearly had taken up on the weekends an awful lot of spaces. But there's some significant issues to work through there. I wish there was a quick fix, but it isn't. It's complicated, and in the past we had working groups. They talked about swinging the gate closed on it, residents only. I can't wave the magic wand, but clearly something like an attendant needs to be there potentially so that we don't have to have police resources. But we discussed whether we could do that or not and what's the likelihood. And it's really difficult in this environment to get enough staff at the places we need to staff, and this is a place where we're not staffing it. So it's multi-layered, and what I would like to be able to do in the off-season is engage the neighborhood a little bit more, go back and revisit some of these issues, and perhaps we'll take another look at what we can do with the parking lot. There's a lot of environmental issues associated with doing anything more there. We tried to improve the street going into the beach. We had limited success trying to widen that up and give a walk-in shoulder, because a few years ago a lot of folks are complaining that they couldn't safely walk their way to the beach, and we've tried to accommodate that. So it's, like I said, we'll engage the neighborhood over the off-season and see if we can come up with a more permanent solution to present to the board. But
So
it would be...
I guess you don't understand about the handicap sign. There's one sign down there. That's fine. I have no problem with it. It can be moved 10 feet to the left.
He said it was the location, and that's the way it was approved, and it's not just something like he can just wave the wand and move it 10 feet. There's a process.
So there's only
involved.
one spot at that.
I don't know enough about that detail. He did tell me that sign was put there, and it's an approved location for that sign, and if you were to do something different, it has to go through a process.
Okay.
And we can take a look at that.
So another question, on one side of the road, there is no parking.
That's correct.
No parking signs.
One side of the road, I believe it's the westerly side, there are no parking signs on that side.
Correct. So you are legally allowed to park on that road if you can get 10 feet from the center line.
If you don't cause constriction of the travel lane.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because there were cars down there a couple of weeks ago with tickets on them that were off the road.
Yeah, so if they don't, my understanding, and Chief, correct me if I'm not wrong, if you can't provide 10 feet of passageway, you can ticket that.
All right, because I was thinking of putting a weed whacker in the back of my truck. But anyways, can you guys go down there and cut that back a little bit so you can get cars off the road? Okay, that'd be great.
All right.
Just one other thing with the resident sticker.
One real quick thing, and we got to move on. Go ahead.
The Yarmouth resident stickers, I grew up and born. All they did had a cop go through the parking lot once or twice a day, put tickets on the car. They didn't have stickers? Yes, the cars that didn't have stickers. They didn't need a beach attendant. They're usually patrolling that area anyways, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
All right. Duly noted. Thank you. Thanks for hanging in so long. Appreciate you being here. All right. Let's move on. Unless the board has any more on this subject.
So you're going to get back?
Yeah. I got a record. Everybody who's sending in emails. I apologize. We've just been inundated by a lot of things, and if I were slow to get back to you, I apologize for that.
All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. Just, I believe if I'm correct here, I'd have to check it with town council. If you were to do something that would install a sticker there, because it's now a free operation, it would take 2 hearings to get to that product, because you'd be installing a fee at a location that's never had one before, so it's a little bit more cumbersome.
Yeah, I do think it's important for you to say that, because I think people think that we can just snap our fingers, make a beach resident only, and then things can happen. It's actually a more involved process than that. Mike, did you have a comment?
We've had a lot of fee hearings. That shouldn't be a big deal. And I'd like to hear from people who are affected, the stakeholders, the people that are having issues.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to have them come in and talk to us about what their problems are, and also like to hear from them as to what they think the solution should be.
Well, I think a fee and not having it free, I think will solve a lot of things. The problem with the resident only is, how do you determine who's there to use the beach and who's there to use the boardwalk? So you don't let anybody who's not a resident use the boardwalk anymore? I think having a sticker and a fee is the best first step to try to control. And if we can't, then perhaps we should look at resident. But I don't want to shut out others that come to our community that enjoy that beach. And the boardwalk and the pavilion, and
it's a huge attraction, no question.
And I know, granted, they could still do it at night. I don't know how much the traffic issue and the parking issue is at nighttime, because that's usually when the boardwalk's being
Maybe if
used
we
the
get one
most.
on the south side, the river park, it'll take some pressure off the north
go.
side boardwalk.
There you go. Anything more on this topic? Are we pretty much ready to move on? Okay.
So ready.
What's that?
So ready.
Exactly. Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda is a proposed police reform legislation letter. And in everyone's packet, there was a draft letter to look at for the purposes of outlining some concerns with respect to legislation on Beacon Hill dealing with the topic of police reform. This was a letter that was submitted by another municipality, and since that letter was submitted and circulated, there has been a revision to it. The revision to the letter that was in your packet makes some additional amendments and suggestions. And the changes that were added were to language expressing concern about the cost to municipalities that will be affected by the reform legislation, calling on the legislature to give due concern or consideration to the financial implications and providing financial resources. Additional language was in the letter to seek clarification on a number of sections. We also have language in this revised letter suggesting that we offer the services of the Yarmouth Police Department and the our police personnel to assist legislators in helping clarify or address or resolve any ambiguities that need to be addressed. The letter identifies or makes note of the fact that in both the House and the Senate version, there are variations between a number of topics, a number of provisions that are substantially different and sometimes difficult to understand or comprehend, or to the extent that you'd want to implement some of them. So this is a fairly detailed letter. We as a community also have, what we do in this letter is also make it very, very clear that we have a great deal of pride as a community in the work of our police department, the relationship with the community, and the fairly vast extent of community and policing and community involvement. And I think that's one of the points that I think is not just mentioned, but I think it's something that we're all very proud of, is the way in which the Yarmouth Police Department actively engages the community and creates an awareness and understanding of how they do business and how the community can play a role in working with our police department in fighting crime. So that's the letter. I'm going to stop right there to see if any board member has any comments to make with respect to this proposed letter. Mike, do you want to start off, and then I'll work my way this way?
I think it's a good letter. I think my understanding is you consulted with our chief before in the process of drafting it, getting his input, getting what his concerns were. I mean, this board's always been supportive of our police department, and I don't think that's going to change, despite the ongoing controversy that's happening nationally. I think the biggest problem with what's going on in the House and Senate is it was done very hastily. It was almost like a knee-jerk reaction. Usually when you want to do something very comprehensive like this, and there are good points to this proposed legislation, and I think the chief acknowledges that, we can always be better, no matter what we do, no matter what our occupations are. We can always kind of evolve with the times. We can always learn from things that are going on. Mistakes that other departments made can be a guidance for us so that we don't follow that path. But all the stakeholders weren't at the table. And when you want to do something that's very comprehensive and something that's going to last and it's going to represent some major reform, you want to make sure that you have all the stakeholders involved in the process. And that wasn't done here. I think it was, frankly, a political response. I think there was a lot of people in the House and Senate that were trying to please constituencies and trying to bolster their positions, their political positions. And, the big issue seems to be, and I want to do some more studying of it myself, but the sovereign immunity issue. I think when you put not only police officers, but other municipal employees at risk of being sued for good faith exercise of their duties, that's going to be a big hesitation on the part of that person going forward in doing what they're called upon to do, because they're going to ask themselves, am I going to lose my house? Am I going to get a lien put on me? What's the situation? Sovereign immunity is an old legal doctrine. It goes back to the sovereign. So when we had kings, when we were under king, you couldn't sue the sovereign. That's where it comes from. A subject in England could not. So the law has allowed basically certain lawsuits. They've both federal and state law. There's no such thing as absolute immunity, because if you act in bad faith to violate someone's civil rights or something like that, you're not protected. If a judge, for example, says, I'm not going to allow the same relief to black people that I do to white people, I mean, that's not going to happen. You're not immune from that. Those are flagrant disregard for people's rights. And we're not talking about that. We don't want that kind of protection. We're saying when there's good faith exercise of a person's duties as a police officer, as a firefighter, and something happens, they should be immune from suit. That's what we're talking. And that's been, as far as I'm concerned, That's one of the key problems that we're having. It's also going to have a negative effect on people entering those public professions. You say, what the hell I need this for? I could get wiped out. I could lose everything. You know. So my position is, and I'm sure I speak for my colleagues on the board here too, that, you know, we understand that there's problems out there, but we feel we have a good police department that's always been responsive, and we want to support their interests, certainly. And we want to send a message to the legislators that that's where we're coming from.
Thank you, Mike. Tracy?
Well said, Mike. I
Thank
think
you.
that that's a great summation of what we're trying to do. Basically, we're saying that they need to be heard, and that the one-size-fits-all is not the case here, where some cities or towns may have issues. Granted, as you said, we could always be better, but, you know, we don't have those same issues, and we should be heard. Also, the qualified immunity, I think, is a significant issue, more than really the rest of it. But I appreciate Mark for taking everybody's concerns, and we've heard from several people on this. I just request that this letter, I don't know if you want me to read it into the record? If you
That's not necessary.
Okay. All right. So basically, we're proposing to send it to the conference committee, which is reconciling the House and Senate.
Yes.
And also, I think the governor should get a copy of it, and I would support this letter and, you know, the signature from all of us.
Thank you. Let me go ahead.
And we didn't
Yes.
touch on the school resource officer issue. That's
If you'd
also
like,
part of
go
that.
right ahead.
Well, I mean, I just think it's an important thing. We've had a long history.
I think you might want to explain that one of the provisions in the bill actually eliminates, or at least one of the proposals eliminates, the school resource officer.
Well, I think that's the original bill wanted to, and now they're I don't think they're saying that anymore, but they're putting restrictions on what they're able to do. And our school resource officer has been a great resource for not only the school district but for the town to work together. And with the way it's written now, I think that will prohibit some of that. So I think that's also another issue that is in here that I'm glad like I said, we've had a long history of that, and we should continue to do so.
Very good. Mr. Tolley.
I echo Mike's comments, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for drafting this. You know, I think that you know, in your and my discussions about what format it would take on. You know, we had discussed other letters that had been written by other communities that took issue with one organization or another in their position. And, you know, it was my feeling that, you know, we should stick up for Yarmouth and not necessarily take issue with any other particular organization standing on the issue. I didn't feel there was a need to do that or to jeopardize or impact our relationship with those organizations. But I think your letter, as drafted, basically states Yarmouth's position, Yarmouth's concerns, doesn't directly reference any other actions by anybody else, and I think that's good. You know, I think in here, you know, we like to we pride ourselves on our ability to be responsible and to be able to govern ourselves, and I think that this letter conveys that, and I look forward to seeing what the response is. So thank you very much for your time and effort on this.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Do I have a motion to adopt the letter as revised?
Can I say one other thing before that?
No.
I can't. Okay.
Now go ahead.
Yes, Tracy,
one part of the letter that I really liked and I failed to comment on, and I think it's important that I do, and if I might just read a small section of it. It says, when the nation witnessed the murder of George Floyd, our community, elected officials, and our entire police department spoke in one voice to condemn these actions. The fact that we support, and I think this is critically important, the fact that we support our police department doesn't mean we don't condemn those actions that we saw. In fact, all I saw on television was police officers and police chiefs supporting the demonstration of that kind of abusive conduct that we all witnessed that was frankly reprehensible. We're not saying that's right. We're not saying that was good. We're not saying that's acceptable. We're just saying that our community doesn't behave like that. Our community is different than that. Our law enforcement part of our government is far different than that. And sometimes people think that if you support your police, you're necessarily condoning that kind of thing. And we're not. We're not condoning that at all.
Well said. All right, so on the motion to
But
adopt.
congratulations and thank you for the letter, too. It's a good job.
Thank you. Anybody else? So we have a motion, do we, or not?
Made motion, yes.
In the second?
I'll second. I forget.
Okay.
It's been so
Eric is
long.
on record as seconding it. So
Okay.
all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? It carries unanimously. Okay. Very good. The next item on the agenda, board and committee actions. We have a committee resignation, but I don't recall, at least in my online packet.
I think that was Susan
Susan
Britta.
Britta. Oh, did she submit her resignation
From Board of Appeals.
Board
She
of
was
Appeals?
told that she can't serve on the Planning Board and Board
Well,
of Appeals at the same time.
I made it. I think we made it very clear when she was appointed to the planning board that she'd have to step down. Thank you. So I'm asking the board to accept the resignation of Susan Britta from the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Recreation Commission. Do I have a motion?
Well,
I don't think she's resigning.
No?
Oh, wait, you're right. Well, I don't know. This email, I offer my...
She's on the Recreation Commission.
no, but
She
that
was-
letter doesn't resign.
She doesn't resign from that. She resigns just from the Board of...
That letter is to Steve DeYoung, the chairman of zoning.
Oh,
So
I
she
see.
may have written another
All right.
email to
Okay.
the chairman of
All
the
right.
Recreation
All right.
Commission. I don't know.
All right. So
But that letter only
I
addresses.
need
Would she
to
have a
get
conflict
I need to
being
get
on rec
another.
in planning? Would she have a conflict being on rec and planning?
I think one of the things that I think we're trying to do is increase opportunities for people to participate and volunteer and serve the town. I think that's sort of been my approach. It's come up on occasion when we as a board have deliberated on appointments, people serving on multiple boards at one time. I think we'd like to sort of spread out those opportunities. So in this case, yeah, I'll make sure that we get the Recreation Commission addressed. But I think in this case, I'm just going to ask for the board to accept the resignation of Susan Britta from the Board of Zoning Appeals, and we'll revisit the Recreation Commission at the next meeting. So, motion?
I move to accept the resignation with gratitude for the service.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It carries unanimously. So, upcoming agenda review. Let's see,
We've added a few more items since last time you saw this. One of particular note would be down the line a little bit as it relates to special town meeting proposal. Right now, conservatively, November 17th. It's after the big general election, which is obviously unprecedented with what's going on. And it also should be able to be far enough down the line that we'd get free cash certified so that if we needed to be able to make some budget adjustments, whether they be for the positive or the negative, we would be able to do that, we think. By having the date then, I also put in the trigger dates for the board to consider as it relates to different articles that would need to be approved to be posted. And so I would propose that on September 15th, we would have a draft of what those articles could be. One of the bigger topics on the agenda would be on the 29th. What would we do about wastewater and any wastewater-related articles as it relates? And then we would hope that shortly thereafter, by the 6th, we would call for the special town meeting if that's the case, and also approve the warrant articles so that we can have enough time to print them and advertise as needed. So hard to believe we just finished annual town meeting and we're back at it for this.
Seems
A little late, though, a couple of months, but
Yeah.
hey, it happened. So.
Business has to go
anything
on.
that you want to change or revise, or any questions?
No, I mean, obviously, we're going to have to put the beach issue as an upcoming.
Yeah, can you make sure that
Yep,
gets on there?
we'll
Dan?
do.
Mike?
Um,
You okay?
I'm good, yeah,
Okay.
for now.
Good for now. Good. All right. All right, I think Eric has stepped out, so,
Snooze, you lose.
yep, okay. Next item. Next item on the agenda is,
I'm gonna have dinner.
okay, well, we're working on it. The town administrator,
You
no,
do
I'm
want
sorry.
individual items?
Individual items. Do you have an individual items, Mr. Stone?
Just one, I guess. On that hearing we had tonight, and we had this governor's directives and things like that, I was disappointed really that we didn't get more guidance from our staff on that, from our Board of Health. I mean, I don't think it should be up to us when we come to a meeting like this to kind of have to wade through these kinds of things. I would think that, I put in a call today to try to get a sense of, from the Board of Health, from Bruce, you know, how I just want you to know that I didn't come here without, to make this confusing. I want to know if they had a position. And I think we need more guidance from staff on issues like this. I'm not saying this is the only thing, but
I don't know, I agree with what you're saying, but the problem is it's changed so rapidly.
No, I know it has.
So many things that if we make decisions
I know.
based on that.
No,
it's-
I know what you're saying, and we can on every little thing, but this drive-in thing's a major, it's a big deal. I mean, it really is. It's a major issue. We've never really done anything like this before. We should have all the input from all of the departments that we can get. You know, I thought Phil Magnuson, for example, was good. He came, he had written this memo to me. He initially was hoping to get it in the packet. I said, don't worry about it. If you can't get it in the packet, you know, we'll get it to the board. That's important, to know what we can do or can't do, and I don't think we should be in the position that we're kind of fumbling through important things that staff should be weighing in on and giving us some guidance on, to be honest with you.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I can tell you that from the moment in time that the idea of the drive-in site would entertain being outside of the vehicles, Mr. Murphy has done a lot of work on how to, if you will, for lack of a better word, massage what we have in writing to a sense that he can accommodate the interests of the patrons, the applicant, and also the Board of Health. And frankly, I was surprised in general when he was good with the idea that they could have these suites or stalls, if you will, because apparently the state hasn't been a lot forthcoming on this, but in other drive-through activities that have gone on, or drive-in activities, this is what how other communities are doing that. And I think as recently as today, we discussed the impacts on these recent orders as it relates. And one of the things that is confusing, there's now so many orders out, so many overlapping and what I'd call divergent or convergent views. And one of the things that I've always stuck with on this since the beginning is whenever there is a sector-specific instruction, that supersedes, and that's always been my understanding, anything else that's occurred. Like, so as a for instance, it all is, Bruce and I had a disagreement, I suppose, as what you call town hall. Is it an office building or is it a public space? And we went back and forth on that because it's not really like an office building like, you know, Cape Cod 5, but it is, our office is, in depending upon what you called it, determine whether or not we could put 25 people in here, or I think it was like 8 persons per 1,000 square feet. So, I mean, there's a lot of confusion there. In this particular case, I had the conversation with Bruce this morning on this. Are we going and following the drive-in specific guidance that came back in early July? Because that's always been what the governor's people have said to us, follow the sector-specific guidance when it's available. If there isn't anything, then you go to these general orders. And it's confounding. And I think what I'd like the board to better understand, I think, if you will, is how Bruce took in the Board of Health the message that was given to the business community. And we have tried to work with people to the extent that even I thought, Bruce, in this particular case, it was like, well, you know what? I'm okay with it. I'll sign off on it. But if somebody were to call the state and they were wrong with it, and I think he said that here tonight, you know, that's on Adam at that point. You know, these are just, incredibly confusing orders that are coming down, and we try to be as thorough when giving you the advice. As it comes to the alcohol, they figured that that's your call. They did have if you were going to go with one of these ideas, here's the one that we thought was the safest one, but they didn't really want to go on the record on that because it's not their jurisdiction necessarily. But this has been a very tough issue. The applicant is been weighing in on a lot of issues with the staff, and we're trying to work with them to make it successful. But I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah, we understand. Mike, did you want to follow up at all? Or are you okay?
No, I acknowledge it's tough, but it's tough on us too.
Yeah, I think
this stuff isn't easy stuff, but we want to get it right. I mean, I want to make sure that whatever fairly should be out there for the public's benefit, for the board's benefit, is vetted, and fairly so.
Yeah, if I could just add a comment. I'm going to add a sort of what I think is an aspect of what Mike is raising that concerns me is when I see the packet. First of all, I'm sure there was a good reason for it, but we got the packets somewhat late. I missed my time that I usually set aside to review all my packets and get myself prepped, so I had to find time, Monday and Tuesday to kind of stab at it. You're right, this particular topic was very complicated, and it required a lot of time to wade through. It would have been helpful, but it may not have been practical for like a cover memo, cover briefing, just sort of help lay the landscape and what some of the options were. But given the complexity, given all the changes, all the different dynamics, I think what was helpful for tonight was to at least have all the relevant staff and personnel. So I appreciate the fact that they were all here to help fill in the blanks and to help us understand. But sometimes as a select board member, and I mean this comes with the job, is that sometimes you're going to get something that's complex and you're going to have to spend a few hours just wading through all the materials. So my only addendum to that, and I don't mind doing that, that's part of the job, that's one of the reasons why we're here, but the sooner we get these packets, particularly on the more complicated stuff, I think from my point of view, the better, because it gives us extra time to prepare and think about the questions that we're likely to ask at the public meeting. So that's my aspect of this. And just, I'm not looking for a response. I mean, I know things get crazy in town hall, but like I said, one way to deal with it was to have the staff all here, and they were prepared to chime in to help guide us through that whole conversation. So, did I? Is that clear?
Like I said, this is just, it's frustrating because you get these orders, and then you try to make sense of them. You call up to Boston, and there's not a lot of good advice being given. You got to make the call,
All right. Tracy, individual items. Mr. Tolley.
I have nothing, thank you.
That's great. Okay, we're going to go on to the next agenda item, which is town administrator items.
On the consent agenda, I'd like to get a motion on that. We have some donations. One of the ones I'd like to bring your attention to is, I'm not sure, you see this about twice a year, and it's from the NARFE group, which is Chapter 818 of the National Association of Retired Federal Employees, and they, like clockwork, come and they had been using the hearing room for their meetings, and they always give us a donation of $100, and they're very pleasant. We miss them, but they wanted to make sure that their last check from earlier this year was accepted, so we recently got that. But they're a wonderful group of folks, some of which live in town, some come from other parts of the South Shore, and they very much love meeting monthly in Yarmouth. So
that's great. Any other consent agenda?
There is a significant donation of an anonymous of a Wheel Easy Sand Cruiser wheelchair at $2,795.
Move the consent agenda with thanks to the.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is town administrator updates.
In your packet, at the end is information that came into us through the Drive-In Site Utilization Committee related to revisiting the topic of a marina.
Yep.
And they did explore that. They came up with some of their viewpoints as it relates to why they didn't think that was an investment worth going back down that road, and they figured that what they wanted to do was focus on where we're going, and in fact we received preliminary notice of $1 million additional grant from the Seaport Council. So it's there for follow-up if you want. If you want more information on that, I certainly can track that down. And also, the fire department's been doing excellent work receiving grants. There's an announcement of another $122,727 grant for replacing extrication equipment that's been dated. So John Sawyer and Phil Simonian have been doing a great job on that as well. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Kudos to the fire department and John. And anything else?
yeah, water resources planning. I have to review a memo I was received. It's the latest cost estimates as it relates to Bass River Country Club and the recharge location. So Tim Garish Architects, who are architects of record, have come up with some. I know that's been kind of like the missing link on the whole conversation. So I got to review that.
Missing 18.
Yeah, missing 18 links. Right. So I'll get that to you. But I think it's important that to update the board a little bit later on wastewater. There's supposed to be a call between. We're trying to get it between the town administrators and the chairman of the boards of selectmen and the water resources chairman to talk a little bit about what DHY's future is, because I think it's important. We're at a critical juncture with that now. So I'll look for that invite shortly.
Agreed. Thank you. We're at the moment of adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody.